Oh my god, as if my procrastination wasn't bad enough. 3 albums I have to listen to. My god, Drake, you're not spoiling us. You're torturing us. That's right, if you didn't already know, Drake just released 3 albums in one night. That may seem impressive in itself, but have you ever heard of the saying, quantity over quality? You might be a little worried. At least if this album dropped in the club, you know you might be getting an early sleep. Because it's a bit boring. Hello and welcome back. You're with me, Icy Snaps. And yes, okay, I admit I'm not the biggest fan of Drake, though I do like some of his songs here and there. But I do always find his releases to be really interesting, right? He's this huge polarizing figure in the music industry. You cannot help but be a little bit interested in what he's cooking up, or, you know, what he's throwing in the trash. I'm going to review these albums in one video. Help me. So we have Maid of Honour, Habibti, and Iceman. Ice.
This is ice.
Altogether about 40 tracks. 40! Yeah, this was a hard listen, but not because it was necessarily bad. It was just really long and kind of, yeah, look, I just had to have a lot of tea breaks, alright? But look, each album seems to have its own flavour. Iceman being a bit more traditionally rap Drake focused. Habibti trying to be a bit more atmospheric and emotional. And Maid of Honour feels a bit more like pop, almost experimental, I don't know. What the hell is up with this album cover? Is it because of the new Michael Jackson biopic? Hee. Whatever. And honestly, these albums prove 2 things at once. 1, Drake is completely oversaturated. And 2, it's hard to kind of ignore. I guess the main problem about these 3 albums is if you listen to them like I did one after another, your brain is mush by the end of it. And honestly, nothing's going in and it's all a bit meh. This is Drake's first solo stuff since the notorious beef with Kendrick Lamar starting in 2024, probably earlier, but as far as I'm aware. But even now, he can't really help but throw a few disses around. But what's funny about them is they kind of don't really do anything. Tracks like Burning Bridges and Make Them Pay have these slight disses to a few people, but they don't really sound like anything impactful. It's like somebody just like whispered under their breath as you're walking away. But let's start with the album Iceman, because this is probably the best of the 3. And even then, it's not great. There are moments here where I think Drake sounds pretty good. Immediately after, you get something that's kind of unimaginative, empty, and just lacking in anything interesting. You have this sort of 90s vocal loop on repeat on so many songs that it stops becoming like a artistic choice and a bit of a musical crutch. The song Dusk, for example, feels instrumentally kind of hollow. So instead of adding depth, they just throw on these heavy snares and this really sort of strong bass. Trying to fill out this space, they've made it feel more empty, but just loud. Every now and then, I think his flow is really nice, but mostly it's just kind of the same. There's so many moments on these albums where he just falls back into that same sleepy cadence, and it's just... oh, it's making me want to go sleep. Tracks like Little Birdie, Make Them Pay, Plot Twist, they start to sort of mush together, especially when he starts spelling out loud like, I'm not in school, just don't. Halfway through the album now, and I've literally written here, just let me die, please. I know that sounds harsh, but there are some good tracks buried amongst all these mediocre ones. National Treasures genuinely work. I like this detuned instrumental, and Drake sounds really invested here. Even Too Hard for Radio had this really nice groove to it. I like the samples, I like the beat. Although the second half suspiciously starts sounding like Not Like Us, which did throw me off a little bit, but I found it quite interesting. Overall, Iceman feels like Drake in a nutshell. A few genuinely good tracks buried by filler. It sits there in the middle because it's better than some of his like more recent work, but it's not as good as his older work perhaps. Coming to the album Maid of Honour now, and this one almost broke me. There's barely anything here that I wanted to add in this review apart from a couple of songs. Outside Tweaking, for example, I quite enjoyed, especially in that latter half where it becomes this like minimal techno track, but it has these subtle vocal chops and these sweet little hi-hats that I quite enjoyed. There was, you know, one or few moments where I thought, oh, this is sounding quite nice, and then it just drops out. For example, I like Cheetah Print featuring Sexy Red as well, but outside of that, things felt a little unfinished. I'm not sure. It feels to me like Drake found a hard drive of unused songs, put them together and was like, yeah, that's an album. Then we get the album Habibti, which opens with one of the worst intros. This acoustic guitar mixed with the most overly processed, overly auto-tuned vocals you could imagine. I love auto-tune, but this is just bad. The whole thing feels bizarre. This album frustrates me the most because I think there were songs on here which were quite interesting in concept, but they just never really took form. You know, tracks like White Bone have some cool ambience, but it just never builds into anything. And then the last track, Prioritizing, has this really cool sort of distorted signals and laser sounds that I thought were quite cool, but it just carries on for the whole song with that one 4-bar loop. It just doesn't do anything. Do something more. Be interesting. Of the 3 albums, Iceman definitely stood out as the better one. It had these cool 90s samples here and there, and there were tracks that stood out way more than the other 3. I mean, two. Not sure why he released the 3. Is it to get streaming numbers way up? Or perhaps he just was working really hard, but obviously not hard enough. But yeah, there's nothing interesting going on, and that kind of sums up all of these albums. So I would give Iceman a 4.5 out of 10. Habibti, on the other hand, gets a 3 out of 10. And Maid of Honour gets itself a 2.5. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought down below. Feel free to drop a like, subscribe, comment, whatever you like. Feel free to check out another one of my videos, buy me a coffee, whatever you want. It's up to you. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully catch you on the next one. Mwah.